Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
Thank you so much for meeting with me again. Have so many questions. And I know that our readers will be really excited to hear about your journey with chronic illness as well. So I wondered if we could start with you telling us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have struggled with depression and anxiety pretty much since my late teens, early 20s. And over time, I have realized that it's something I need to manage rather than like, this will disappear if I do X, Y, and Z, that it's a feature of who I am. I'm always building new coping strategies. And it's really interesting for someone who has anxiety and depression to go out into the publishing world where there's tons of rejection. So that helped me develop resilience for that. Like, this will happen. My book isn't for everybody. Not everybody's going to find it their cup of tea, or it's not necessarily that my story's bad or my writing's bad. It's just not what a particular agent or publisher is looking for. So I think managing my anxiety and depression, I always look for ways to like, how do I take it to another level where I build another layer of resilience? And so the writing and publishing journey has helped me build resilience. And then also, I just really enjoy research and writing. So, it's an outlet for something that really brings me joy and interests me. And so that is another piece of just building my life around how do I improve and manage depression and anxiety.
Now, is that something you have to manage in your daytime job? What do you do outside of writing?
Yeah, so for a long time, I had been working in communications and marketing for nonprofits. And in August of this year, I started my own consultancy after working at several nonprofit organizations over the past 25 years, which was like, wow, time goes fast. And so, what inspired me to set up my own consultancy, I just felt like the timing was right with the publication of the book. I wanted greater flexibility. One thing I experienced when I was working for smaller nonprofits is if you need additional help, it's really hard to find affordable help for a project like, hey, we're having a capital campaign and I just need some extra help in this 3-month window. And so I'm designing my consultancy for nonprofits and small businesses who need help with marketing or comms in a more defined way that's affordable. I've had a couple of clients and we just work out like a scope of work agreement of what this looks like. And the small business piece, both my parents were small business owners. And all four of my grandparents were small business owners. And I know that small businesses have that same struggle of like, what is manageable? What can they afford? They can't afford, a $5,000 a month, 6-month retainer with a large agency. But what can someone bring to the table on a short term or just getting people started? One of the services I'm hoping to develop in my consultancy called Kean Communications is just like, how do we just set something up that's sustainable for you as a small business? And then also audience identification. I think there's so much pressure, and I'm feeling this as a writer, of like you have to be on every platform and you have to do all the social media work. And well, if you have a limited resource, like what would be the ideal place for you? Like, where's your audience? And for instance, if you're serving people over age 50, you probably don't need to be on TikTok and Snapchat. You might be fine just Facebook and maybe Instagram or LinkedIn. If your beating is really a place to lean into in terms of social media. And then also content creation. I'm hoping to develop like what is an ethical use of AI to help you with your content creation, but still maintain ethics and use it in the correct way and not put out things that if you just let AI go on its own, you might find that AI isn't very accurate on its own, or what it produces is a lot of filler words. In my use of AI and experimenting with it, I often think of it as a 10th grader who didn't read the book. So they're putting in a lot of filler words to get their word count for their book report. I mean, that's the vibe. So, how do you take some prompting with AI and a starting point and refine it and help you save time in content creation? So those are the things I'm working on for 2025 for my business.
What drew you to communications to begin with? I know that you went to the U of O journalism department, correct?
Yeah. So way back in high school, I worked on my school paper. I've always liked writing, and I was the associate editor my senior year. And also, my senior year, I served in student government, and my job was publicity, like publicizing all the student activities that student government was involved in. I think that was the seed. And then at University of Oregon, I majored in journalism, and then I switched to history. I also wrote for the student government publication at University of Oregon. And then my senior year, I did an internship with the city of Eugene, and it was PR and comms. And I had a wonderful mentor named Rosie, and I was just like hooked from then. It's like, this is a great job. Like, you get to write, you get to be the person who frames the story for your organization, you get to work with the media. And I belong to an organization called PRSA, which is a Public Relations Society of America. And I'm just wrapping up serving as the Oregon chapter president. And one thing that PRSA really emphasizes that I think is so crucial in the environment we are in now is ethics. So, how do you ethically present your story? How do you ethically communicate with the public and your various audiences? And so I feel really strongly about developing communicators in marketing and PR and comms that are considering ethics. And I think that's just going to be more and more important. I think there will be a pendulum swing where people will really want to be assured that the business that they're working with or the nonprofit that they're supporting is communicating ethically and transparently. So that's something I feel very strongly about.
I don't know if you listen to Pop Culture Happy Hour from NPR. There was just an episode this week where they were speaking about their predictions for 2025. And
Oh, wow.
they were talking a lot about AI and its use in media. And I think you're right. I think ethics is the most important thing to focus on, because I'm not naive enough to think that no one will use it. And I've used it. It's very helpful in certain ways, but you don't want it to do everything for you.
Yeah, exactly. The way I've approached it is thinking of it as a tool. If I'm building a house, this is a saw and a hammer. It's not the house, right? The ultimate thing is the house, but there are tools that can expedite the building of your house and help you along the way. The ethical use of AI starts with viewing it as a tool and realizing that the human element and the ultimate goal, where we are looking at what is ethical, what is best for people, how do we use it as a tool in a really ethical way that can help you save time, help you brainstorm, all of these things.
The thing that I was left with that was interesting from the interview that I mentioned is they said that eventually, and they think it'll happen in 2025, that all of the AI feed machines are just really going to recycle their own material because there's been so much. So it's going to cease to be useful in certain ways. So really the only way to proceed is ethically.
And it is, and there are limitations because it is drawing from an imperfect source. So it is imperfect. For instance, I put in like my new book, I put into Chat GPT, what is the reception of this new novel, The Nazi Housewife of Queens, New York? And it was telling me my novel took place in America in the 1930s, which is incorrect. The scenes in America take place in the 1940s and 50s. And when I asked that question, my book had been published. It was on Amazon. It was on Barnes and Noble. It was out there. It wasn't like it was some super obscure thing, which before it was published, I would expect that I wouldn't get an answer. So that was fascinating to me. So I encourage people to do that. Ask ChatGPT. tea about it and see how accurate it is. Sometimes it's not. And then the other thing that is a ethical concern, and I think the Washington Post had a recent article, is that because of what AI is drawing from, it contains our existing prejudices and existing areas where we need to work. For instance, they were talking about feminine beauty, and it was white, young, thin, and there are other types of beauty in other cultures, and beauty can be perceived in different body types, different ages. But what the well that it's drawing from is really reinforcing some stereotypes, some tropes,
Mhm.
and it's not perfect by any means. And I think that's why the human element of it is so important.
That's such a thorny topic, but I think the future of it is the most interesting part.
Yeah, I
Actually,
think there's lots of uses for it. I just think of ways that, again, back to it being a tool, how can we use it as a tool in an ethical way?
mhm,
I know there are people who are very anti AI, and that I think that is true anytime something this big comes up. Like I remember when social media launched, it's like, I'll never be on social media. Or even way back when the internet itself was starting to be a big thing.
uh-huh.
I worked at a nonprofit and we had a board member who said, This internet's a fad. It's going to be like the CB radio of the 70s. It's just a fad.
I remember that too. That's very funny. Now, that being said, which media outlet or which social would you recommend for writers? Is there one that you prefer? You said it often depends on audience, but is there something that you generally tell people, clients?
Yeah, I am being pretty expansive, but I have found that Facebook and Instagram have been the most interactive. I have dipped my toe into TikTok, and honestly, I think the title of my book in TikTok is getting me low interaction because, again, back to AI, that's machine. It's an AI just scrolling for words. And if it's a provocative word with no context, they're just going to be like, no.
Mhm,
The word Nazi, clearly a very provocative word,
mhm.
they're going to push that down, even though my book isn't pro-Nazi or neo-Nazi. It's a story. It's a true story, and it's historical fiction. So that's the other piece of it. There's no context.
Mhm.
That's the other limitation of AI. And I will say, just putting my book out on TikTok, which isn't a platform that I'm super familiar with, except for cat videos, which I love. I noticed that was low interaction for me. But I know that my readers are probably women age 35-ish plus.
Mhm.
And I think they are most likely to be on Facebook. And
Was thinking that you might say LinkedIn. I've spoken to someone in the last year who was telling me that LinkedIn was the wave of the future. And this was during the very extreme popularity of TikTok about a year ago. It was interesting because that's not something that, as a person who is not from the business world, it wasn't on my radar. As someone who has a very strong business background, I think that's interesting. I do think that's also a component, like you say, but I'm glad to hear that it's not necessarily the best one, just because I don't know it very well.
I use LinkedIn quite a bit for Kean communications
Uh-huh,
because I feel like that is definitely the spot for that. I
absolutely.
have put some of my book content on there,
Mhm,
but what I've really noticed with LinkedIn is that it is more about job searching, trends, thought
uh-huh,
leadership, and
uh-huh,
B2B type
uh-huh.
stuff.
Now, do you read only nonfiction? Do you read a lot of fiction also? Or what kind of stuff are you naturally drawn to as a reader?
I am really a history, nonfiction, and fiction. Like that just seems to be, I just can't get away from it. Right now, I am listening to Eric Larson's In the Garden of Beasts. I
Hmm.
love his stuff. His stuff is really great. And then the most recent book I finished was from Doris Kearns Goodwin, and it was about her life in the 60s, which was super fascinating to me. And then before that was another history nonfiction by an author. I can't, drawing a blank on his name, but I know he did the Princess Diana biography that was like super explosive in the early 90s. And this book was called 17 Carnations, which was nonfiction about King Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson and their deep and very disturbing ties to Nazism. It was quite shocking to me.
Ooh, I have to read that. I haven't read that one. I've read Dolores Kearns Goodwin's novel, and I love everything by Eric Larson.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
he's so great.
He just has such an engaging style. It's one of those nonfiction writers that you don't realize you're learning while you're learning things.
Yeah, it reads like fiction.
It does.
Another author who does that really well is Candice Millard, and her book called River of Doubt is about Theodore Tripp in the Amazon, mapping part of the Amazon that was really quite remote in the early 1900s. And he went with his son Kermit, and his son was struggling. And it was just a really beautiful father-son story, as well as an amazing story. Like everything about Teddy Roosevelt is outsized. Like he's going to go on this huge adventure on the Amazon and nearly die and like all these crazy things because he was just this larger than life person. But Candice Millard's work is so great. She did another one, Hero of the Empire, about Winston Churchill's a young journalist in the Boer War and him being a POW and escaping and all these things. And a lot about his mom is in that book too, Jenny Jerome Churchill, who was an American,
Mhm.
who was also just a crazy, like oversized figure, you know.
And one of those women, like we were talking about last time, one of those American heiresses.
Yes, Jenny Jerome Churchill. Yeah, I think she's a fascinating character for sure.
Now, what kind of other things do you do for fun?
I like to bake
Nice. Is there anything in particular that you like to bake?
cookies and cakes. Like I'm not a savory baker. I'm in it for the sweets.
Oh, yeah, I like that too.
And then I just feel so lucky to be in Oregon. I love to learn about different things in the state and go do them. My husband and I did a quick weekend getaway to Fort Stevens
Uh-huh.
in Astoria. And I don't think people know that during World War II, what a crucial area Fort Stevens was. And there's just so much great stuff in Oregon. I just feel really lucky. So, like, I'm hardcore Oregon girl.
Have you read the book Astoria?
I haven't. It's on my nightstand.
It's so good. It's huge, but so interesting. I had read it just before I went there once, and going up the column in Astoria made it feel so real. You're right. There's so much history here, which is funny because we're on the younger side of the country.
There's so many interesting, like, oddball things.
Mhm.
And I really like the personality of Oregon to me always seems like very maverick, very like we're doing it our way, which I really love.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like you're drawn to that kind of character in both your writing and your reading as well. Now, if we could share your socials again, I want to make sure we did them last time, but I want to make sure everyone has your website is stacykeanwrites.com.
Yep. StacyKean writes WRITE. Yeah, because there's a number of ways to spell Kean. Mine is Kean. If you get to my website, there's links to my socials there. And there's a newsletter sign up. So if you want to sign up for a newsletter, I'll probably be doing some giveaways soon. So that's an incentive for you.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you if you had any advice for other nonfiction historical writers.
I would say write about something you like because you will have to read it so many times. Be sure you really like the topic and your story. And I've heard this from other writers, and I tend to agree with it, is sometimes people, they want to be successful in sales and financially. And I think I do too. If you're chasing the trend or you're like, this is really popular and selling well, so I'm going to fit myself into this. If it's not something that you're passionate about or interested in on your own, then I wouldn't recommend going that route. And I also think that what I discovered as well is the publishing road is long. So the thing that is really hot right now 9 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years might not and probably won't be the hot selling thing. So I tend to agree with that notion of something you care about, writing something you care about. I tend to disagree, like you have to, if you haven't lived it, if you don't have direct experience, you can't write it. I don't agree with that, but I definitely agree with if it's not a topic or a story you care about or a genre that you care about, I wouldn't recommend writing in it.
That's interesting because I started writing things, all different kinds of things, because they did sell. And I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with it until I could write something that mattered to me. So I think that's excellent advice.
Yeah, and I also think, why try to be someone else? And this maybe is a little bit woo-woo. Like, I think we're here because we are unique and we have our own unique stories. Even if you feel like something is, gosh, no one's going to be interested in this. I think that voice needs to be heard. I keep thinking back to a story that Michelle Obama told about meeting Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he was talking about his very famous Hamilton musical. And she was like, okay, a musical about a colonial era guy. Good luck with that. Like, she didn't see it as marketable at all. I think most people, if you said, yeah, I want to pick up on one of the founders, it's kind of obscure, and I want to make it a musical, people would be like, huh. But he did it in such a way that it was wildly successful.
Oh, it's
So,
amazing.
yeah, like, look at look at a lot of different things. Like, I think there is, and I think everybody probably has a story, whether they share it with in writing is one way, but in other ways, people's voices are important from their unique standpoint.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And that's why I'm so excited to read things that other authors are passionate about. That's why I love reading your work. So I'm very excited to get up so I can see you at a signing sometime soon.
Yeah, and I just confirmed that I will be at a signing on January 21st at 5 p.m. at the Book Bin in Corvallis. I will be there.
Okay, January 21st, the book bin. I will be there. Thank you again. And I am so excited about your business. I guess I remember talking to you about that you were going to start it, but I didn't realize you already.
I started it in August, and it was interesting because I told some friends and they're like, oh, I have a couple clients. So I got clients immediately, which was sort of scary. I did a couple projects already, which was helpful and they were great clients. So it was a good learning experience. One of my goals for 2025 is to really work on this concept of like, how can I build a package for a small business that says, here's how you ethically use AI to save time and create
Mm-hmm.
content. It's almost like a conversational tool. Like when I asked it about my book, just find out what is out in the world about you, your business.
I never thought to ask that.
Yeah, just ask it because what it does is it combs the internet and finds stuff, and some of it's inaccurate.
Wow, that's so wild and so interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And also, I've prompted it with scenarios like if you had a book published by a small publisher, what are some things that people have done in the past? And it will give you a list. And that's
Mm-hmm.
a super helpful thing. It's almost like a more customizable search engine in a way. I think it's useful for that. I also say everything it gives you, double check it, take it with a grain of salt. It's not 100% accurate. It might not even be 80% accurate.
Is there one particular, do you like ChatGPT or do you like Google Gemini? Is there one that you like better?
I like ChatGPT. I've just been using it the longest. One that I've done a little bit of work with a client was called Perplexity.
Hmm.
And it's more of helping you brainstorm. Was doing some media pitching and how would you position this kind of dry information into a hook. Perplexity was really great for that. A business writer, Anne Wiley, that I follow, I attended
Mm-hmm.
her class and she recommended Perplexity just to come up with a human hook, whereas a lot of businesses have this like jargony gobbledygook stuff of best in class, cutting edge, blah, 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 blah. And what does this do? There's no story. And she talked about a client that she had in Denmark who had come up with a camera alarm system combination. They had all this, technical things about this thing. And she said, well, why should people buy that? That was her question. I get that it does all these things, but as a business owner, why would you buy it?
Right.
This person said there was a car that spun out of control and it crashed through the window of a restaurant. And because there was an alarm system, they estimate 10 lives were saved because people were able to get out of the way. And she was like, there's your headline, life-saving camera alarm. And you give that example of the restaurant, and that's the story, not like sorry engineers and super
Right.
smart people that invent things.
But don't bury the lead.
Yeah, the whole essential question that has always been the essential question is why should people care? What's in it for them? Oh, well, I would like an alarm that could potentially save lives.
This whole conversation has been just incredibly interesting because I've been toying around the ideas of the ethics of AI for a long time.
Especially in the publishing world, like I have learned, and it is in my contract with my publisher, that you cannot submit AI generated content for your book because you can't copyright it
Right.
because it's not your original work.
And it's crazy that you have to have that in your contract. I did too in my last book. And it's funny, I didn't even really think about it because I was like, well, of course I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, but and I think it's died down, but I did see some, and it made me laugh because it's like, you can earn $10,000 a month by just putting together an AI book and putting it on Amazon. It's like, no, you can't.
Good luck.
But it was like, yeah, just like you can publish all these books and they'll be selling really great on Amazon. And it's like,
yeah,
you don't even know how hard it is to sell books. And then our publisher was saying Amazon had to really get rid of a lot of AI dreck that had just been uploaded as books. And also people using names and titles similar to bestsellers. Like I think it was Savannah Guthrie who had an AI imposter book that was using her name and her book title or a variation on that and getting people to purchase it thinking it was Savannah Guthrie's book, but it wasn't. It was an AI kind of impersonator book.
I have had that happen with different books of mine where people have, I don't know, probably 3 or 4, and the publisher notified me they were genre fiction and people had literally just copied it and then put a similar title, slapped it on, and sold it. And you can't really stop them fast enough.
No, because it's a quick process.
Right.
And yeah, it's just interesting to think about the future of how important ethics and authenticity will be because people it's almost like we've been swimming in this. There's just a flood of stuff.
The Wild West, really.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And it's also, there's so much, like it's a wall of information that we're facing every day. And that's the super big challenge of comms and marketing is like, how do you break through to the person you want to break through to when they get 5,000 messages a day?
Now, do you offer different kinds of packages? I forgot to ask you that with your company.
So right now, I'm basically just talking through and kind of coming up with a scope of work agreement and just talking about the goals and then also kind of like what's realistic. And then also like one thing I've been doing with my book and one thing I did in my career, especially at the last job I worked at the contingent, is really targeted ad buys and you don't have to spend a ton. And so I've just been doing like some very inexpensive experimentation where like on BookBub, I just concluded a campaign where I just targeted people who liked Martha Hall Kelly, who's a writer who her Lilac Girls book is, I feel like very much in the same.
Yeah, similar vein.
People who like her book will probably like mine. And so just like a very small buy on BookBub of like people who like her. How do we like get, my book's not for everybody, right? There are tons of people who would have no interest, but there are people who'd be like, oh yeah, I like that. Just even from the title would be like, oh.
Yes. And it is well worth the read. It's so fascinating.
It's really wild. The other thing I found out in just searching like how my book title is ranking is that there's a movie coming out called The Housewife about her. And it's a whole kind of different spin. It's in production, so they don't have a release date. So it's more about the reporter who uncovered her.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, the reporter assumes it's the husband, and then when he goes to interact with them, he realizes it's the woman.
Whoa.
And Naomi Watts plays the role. And I was just like, oh, I'm so interested in that.
Oh, what perfect timing for you.
Yeah, hopefully that raises interest in this story.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure it will. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
It's sort of a little bit of a different take, which I
Right.
thought was kind of cool. I'm a big Sopranos fan. Michael Imperioli, who played Christopher,
Mhm.
is going to play Tony DeVito, who is, in my mind, the hero,
Uh-huh.
the real life hero,
Right.
who is like pushing this through. I'm super excited that the spotlight will shine on him a little bit.
Huh?
He was a legitimate hero, and I did
Yeah.
some subsequent reading about him after I
Mhm.
published the book just because I
Yeah.
was interested in him. And he did a lot of trying to bring Nazi criminals to justice and got really stymied because they were protected by
Yeah.
the CIA and
Mhm.
like a whole bunch of stuff. So Tony DeVito died in the 90s, late 90s. A whole bunch of stuff got declassified in 2006. And Tony DeVito was 100% right about all the things he was pursuing.
Oh,
And the CIA and government figures,
thank you so much for talking to me today. I really
yeah,
appreciate it. Thank you. And
yeah.
I'll make sure that all of the listeners have info on how they can reach you and especially how to buy your new book.
Yeah, that would be great. I've so enjoyed talking with you. It's been a real blast.
Thanks. So awesome. I love it. And I will definitely be there at the book bin.
I'm excited. I just got the artwork from the book bin today via email and was like, oh, cool.
That's a great bookstore. I love that place.
Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all too much. Lost inside the black. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we need to lift the voices of those who've overcome and expose the ones that made the choices to stay and fight, not run. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all too much. Lost inside the black. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we need to lift the voices of those who've choices.